Ciao. Someone said the other day on the Nomad page, so what do you do in the wilderness all day for 2 weeks at a time when there's nothing to do? And I thought, wow, I do artwork. I'm experimenting with ink paints and acrylic pours right now. Take walks in the beautiful wilderness. You can see the mountains behind me. But today I'm going to do something with natural building. And I've collected some things I'd like to show you, so I'm going to turn the camera around. We're in Arizona, and there's lots of sand, clay, very few stones around my campsite. These are here when we got here. So I've made what's called cob, which is hay, straw. This is straw from the area right here at the site. And mixing it with a little bit of sand that we just dug up, some clay that we got from a nearby stream bed, and some water. And we made these bowls the other day. Right now they are rock hard, all of them, and they have cemented these stones in place. So this is like a foundation. And I'm going to mix some clay, make another slurry, and begin to erect a cob side around this structure. We're making this primitive oven out in the desert, where the desert and the prairie come together here in Arizona. Just a beautiful place. So I've assembled the ingredients for making cob. And you can make your own oven out in the wilderness. We have the stones. We have some water. We have a bucket that we're going to mix clay into to make a slurry. It's a pile of sand that we dug out of that hole. This is the raw clay that we got from the stream bed. I've soaked it overnight. It's very malleable now, so when you get it out of the side, it's probably going to be dry. And just soak it overnight. And this is just some straw that we've collected here on the ground. You can see that it's all over the place. It's a great resource, natural resource, and we're going to mix all of those things together. So thanks to Deborah for being my trusty assistant and filming so I could use both hands. So as you saw, we had raw clay yesterday. We soaked this overnight just in water. I just put it in here with water, and now it's malleable. You can just take it apart. The object of making slip is just to add water to clay to make it look like and feel like, we call it chocolate pudding, but in natural building it's called slip. And you just work that slip just like this until it's all mixed together and you have a pudding consistency where it's just pourable. You'll see the shine on the clay come up in the sun. And this matter, these roots and stuff from the clay bed, just leave them in there. It's perfectly fine. You could have leaves or something, other organic matter. It's perfectly fine to leave it in there. So I'm just going to ask Deborah to pause for a minute, and I'll mix the rest of this and we'll come right back. So I'm almost done making this slip. All of my clay is worked in. There's no huge rocks in there or anything. Little pebbles, it's perfectly fine, but all the clay is mixed. And if you were going to do a large structure, like we built a straw bale home, and we would take those plastic blue barrels that you can find at Agway or something like that, that are food grade, we would cut those in half, make 2 barrels, and we would soak the clay in one of those, then take it out the next day and mix the slip in the other barrel. You can use, rather than your hands, I don't like a lot of noise for machinery like drills and stuff like that, which you're going to have to use if you're going to make a large amount of slip, you put a paddle bit and a drill and you'd spin it. It makes a really good mess, but it's a lot of fun. Clay is actually very good for your skin. So you could do that. And if you're going to make a lot of cob, you could throw it into a mortar mixer and mix everything in a mortar mixer, then let it stay overnight, and it's better the next day for construction purposes. Or you can make it in a very primitive way. You can just dig a hole and use your feet back and forth, step up and down, use your hands, and the hole in the ground just serves as your vat. You could I'm going to show you a method in a few minutes to make cob with just a tarp. And it's a very safe way to make it because you're not using your feet, which could be hazardous if you slip. And clay and plastic are very slippery together, so we throw it rather than step in it. But right here you can get, it's almost pourable, and I'm going to leave this, and then just before we're ready to use it, I'm just going to add a little bit of water.
So can you explain what the difference between slip and cob is? Because you use the word cob,
yes,
but you're making slip here.
Right. Slip is the main ingredient, or one of the, you can't make cob without slip. Slip is just clay and water. When you add sand, it's an aggregate, which is added next because it mixes well, and that's the next step. And then the last step is actually adding the straw or a cellulose. You could use cattails. You could use hay, but I don't recommend it. Straw is a wonderful product. There's a lot of it to be used. It has an insulatory factor that hay doesn't have. But for these purposes, we're just using what's available to us. You can see it's very, very dry. And if you were you can use long strand cob, like if you were making a large area, you would use long strands. If you're doing something small, like in an earthen floor, you would just take this and just crumble it into small pieces and then add it. So we'll catch up with you in just a few minutes. So we're adding the clay slip. Beautiful consistency.
Okay.
Okay. It's really drying quickly in Arizona. What did you say the humidity rate was today?
20%.
20% humidity. It is about 72 or 3 degrees.
I think it's about 75.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. This is perfect weather for doing this kind of construction. Very light wind. Okay. I'm going to get some sand. Sand is really a wonderful natural material. As you can see, I'm using it actually to clean this bucket off. Really good exfoliant. A little bit of sand and some clay is wonderful for your skin. You can make a cake or pancakes. If you can make a batter, you can build with cob and clay and straw bale. Just trying to incorporate it. We're just going to use an old method just to throw this back and forth, and then we will add the straw. So Deborah's going to grab one end, and I'm going to grab the other. I'm going to grab way up here. Okay, we only have a little bit. And we're just going to work the clay back and forth. So we're going to pick up on this side, this side, and it rolls it down. And then we're going to pick up on this side and it rolls it back. Roll it. See how you can't see the sand anymore? I'm going to spread this out just like that. Now the last part comes. Take the straw or cattail, whatever you have. I want to work it into the clay mixture. What we're going to do is we're going to do this, we're going to throw it, and then we're going to add a little bit more and throw it, and we'll come back. So now we have gone from clay slip to sand and clay slip, and now we're going to make what's called, known in natural building as cob. And that's the mixture of those ingredients. And you can see that this is becoming incorporated. See how that holds together? That's cob. I'm just going to let it sit covered so it doesn't dry out too quickly. And we'll come back a little later. So it's been about 12 hours. We've let what is now cob sit overnight in this tarp. And I'm going to uncover it and see what it looks like. That's perfect. See how that held together? So I'm just going to drag this over here to where I'm going to be working. So when you add new clay to old clay or to stone, you have to wet the dry area before you can add the cob, which is a wet. So I'm just going to spray this is just water down, because you don't want these materials to absorb all the water that's in the cob over here and dry it out quick. So this will make this kind of malleable again, so it will be a happy marriage, and a happy marriage is lovely. Incidentally, when we're making cob, it's just like a bird making a nest with mud and sticks and straw. So this is natural building at its most primitive, really. You wouldn't want to we're in Arizona, so you wouldn't want to go all the way around because that'll all dry out before we get there. So just do a little bit at a time. Set that aside. See how my fingers make that impression? That's what you want to have in cob. And it stays together. That's really heavy. I would venture to say that is about 6 or 7 pounds right there. So I want small pieces, and I just want to do what's called just throwing cob. Throw it down, and you'll see that's on there. Look at that. And then you're going to be mushing it around. Make some indentations with your fingers, and that will accept the next glob of cob. So, see how that splatters? Now make your finger impressions. Mesh that all in, and you'll feel it. As soon as it doesn't come away, you've got your surface connection, and that's what you're looking for.
Now, will you let that dry, or are you going to put stones on top of it before it dries?
What we're going to do is we're going to get a bit of a pile here if we have enough clay, and then go up. But I think we need to go get some more clay in order to make some more cob, because this is probably only going to be enough for the bottom layer. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue around. This will dry overnight. That's why I'm putting my fingers in here, so that tomorrow when we come and throw more clay, when we throw the cob on this dry, it will go in where my fingerprints are, and that will be a happy marriage again. So
you don't want that surface to be smooth. You want it to be roughed up a little bit.
Right, because they need to accept, every layer needs to accept the next layer, and if it's flat, you can't really do that. Not in cob construction anyway. And as you can see, this can go very quick. Now I'm going to go and get some water. I'm going to wet this down, and then I'm going to come back and use my fingerprints.
Just like painting, you always want to have a wet edge.
That's really good. That's great. Yes. Now on the inside, I'm pushing this in, bottom of the stones. So the object of building this primitive oven out here is to capture all the heat, so that when you just add the coals, the ground, the earth, the cob, and the stones will keep that heat, radiant heat inside. So even the next morning, you could still go ahead and cook on it. So I'm throwing the cob in here, where you can see that the stone has married the first row of cob balls. And now I'm just taking more cob and throwing it. And you want that connection. You have to use some force. So this is a really fun way to use, your body this way. This is very good exercise. See how that's in there? Now that is really in there, and air is not going to get from this side in or this side out. So the heat stays in, the cold stays out. So I'm going to continue on here, and then we'll come back. We are in Arizona, and we're building this beautiful, natural, primitive oven. out of natural clay, and I wanted to show you how we get that out of a stream bed, how to determine what's clay. If it's brown, it just turns to dust and blows away. That's not clay. Down here you can see this is gray. That has more of a clay element, sticks together. And if you look down here in the mud, you can see that there's the dark, the top is brown, which is the dirt, but if you look underneath it, you can see that this clay is right here, and that is dark gray, this beautiful clay. And that's what you use in cob construction and to use in straw bale plastering. That's beautiful clay. So we're going to take some of this and you can join us later in the completion of the oven. Okay, it's our third day. It's our third day in Arizona because the wind has really picked up and we could not work yesterday. But it's a warm wind today, and although it's a little annoying, I'm going to continue on. So we made the cob, and this is what it looks like. And what we're doing now is just forming around the base of our primitive oven, and we've put our finger holes in there to make sure that the new clay is going to go down and mesh with the other. And what I've been doing is just bringing some green branches, and I thank the trees for those, and just bending them or tipping them up, and we'll fasten them in the middle. And what we'll do is make a very thin coat of cob over this little structure here. And in a day or so, after it's fired and it's warmed, it'll be dry enough to use, and as time goes on, it'll get drier and drier, and this will be here for the next few summers at least. So tune in. Let's see if we can get this formed by the end of the day, and in a couple days we're going to make some pizza. So ciao. I have the stone on the top to actually create some pressure on the limbs because they were popping out. Once this clay is dry, they'll all mesh together. There won't be any holes in here, and it will retain its heat, which is the purpose of just having a primitive oven, is just to retain the heat so you can cook numerous times over numerous hours without adding wood. Once you add the charcoals, the heat retains because the oxygen is lessened. And this is how they make excellent pizza. In Italy and in Greece, they have these, and they use these for baking bread, and it's really wonderful. So catch us later when we actually try it out.
Go.
It's March 8th, 2022. We're just about to put another layer of clay. This is the final layer of clay on top of this very primitive straw, it's cob oven. And you can see by the hollow, it's really hard. And if you've been following, this is just straw from around the fields. We're on the prairie here in Arizona. The clay is this clay we just got from a nearby stream at Oak Tree Canyon. Just added water. Beautiful, beautiful clay. We're just going to add a little bit of sand to this, make a slurry, and put it on here. It will cover up all of these pieces of straw that are sticking out. Just makes like a nice finish on it, and it'll make everything airtight. There might be little tiny air bubbles in here that will let air out. You don't want that because this is to keep the heat in. We'd run out of clay the other day, and it was really fierce winds, and we didn't want to go out, so we opted just to use the clay that we had and the cob that we had mixed, and it covered everything that you see here. Typically with these kind of ovens you don't have a chimney, but we do because we're using this in a different way. It's really windy here, and if you're going to start a fire you have to have an enclosure and a way to really control it. And I don't suggest that you have a fire unless it's permitted. So right now we're getting ready to add the final coat of clay, and we're going to just wet down the surface that's going to accept the other clay. So we want to marry these two together like you always do when you're adding a plaster of clay. You have to make it wet. And I'm going to show you this technique because you can't just spray that. You can't just do this because you're not getting what needs to be done. So what I want Deborah to capture is I'm going to spray this until I see a shine on the clay. And I've already wet this a little bit. Let me come over here on this side. I'm going to do it to a raw piece so you can see what I mean. Now once it gets shiny like that, you can move to the next area. And don't do this whole thing, just do the area that you're going to load with your clay next, and then move around. As you go around, go ahead and spray. We are in the desert in Arizona, so the little wind and the arid desert air here dries things very quickly. So that's about all I'm going to do on wetting this down for this section, because this now is ready to accept the slip. So we'll pause for a moment and we'll get ready to add the slip and come back. So I'm getting ready to make the final layer of clay plaster, which is raw clay mixed with just water. Has become this chocolate pudding mixture like that. We've taken the roots out because I want a smoother finish. Taken all the small stones out because I want a smooth finish, and now I'm just going to add an aggregate which helps the clay marry to the other clay, the cob, and we'll see how that works out. So I'm just going to add just a little bit. Let me mix this up. I'm wearing a glove because I cut my finger earlier, and this clay is raw from a stream. The cows were drinking out of it, so there was cow dung there. So if you do have cuts, use gloves. On this, I don't have a cut, so I'm not using a glove. And you'll see when you feel it, there's a difference in what's gone from just clay slip, water and clay, to the aggregate. It feels a little sandy now. So that's what you want. I have a little stone in there I'm going to throw in the pile. Use that for some type of decoration. And just as soon as that's all incorporated, we're ready to put it on. Okay, so now if this had dried out, you would want to hit it again with water. And you see how this just spreads out. Isn't that beautiful? Use a shirt or clothes that you don't care that gets, they're called clay clothes, by the way. Clay clothes are clothes that you don't care that have a gray tinge after, no matter how many times you wash them. Clay is not easy to get out. I don't recommend that you use clay clothes when you play with clay and then put it in your washing machine. Rinse them out in a tub of water outside. Get all the clay out that you can, and then put it in your washer. See how that stays on there? That's the sand and clay acting together. This will do a few things. It will make a finish coat, which is much more water resistant than just having the cob. If you do what's called burnishing after this is dry, which is taking a flat stone and rubbing very hard on it to create a shine, that will give it a coat. It's called tetalak, and that is from Morocco, a technique that is used for tubs and swimming pools to make clay watertight, and sinks and all kinds of things that you'd want to make watertight. So I'm just coming down here, and this will make this airtight from the outside in. And that's what we want for cooking purposes, for ovens. Now you can see where I don't have any water here, so I'm going to get some more spray. And I'm going to go right into the other clay. So we make sure that no spots don't have any water underneath. We need that water to get those to mold together very nicely. So we have the shine coming up here. And these are things that you really can do by yourself. I mean, you can literally build your own house with cob and live very comfortably in these types of dwellings. These small sticks that are sticking out, just cut them off. These little pieces, if they don't mesh in, just cut them off. It's no big deal if they stick out, really. This feels beautiful on your skin, by the way. Raw clay is a very beautiful asset to have around you from the natural environment. It's an exfoliant for your skin. See how that just sticks on there? That's the consistency that you want. If it slides off, there's too much water and not enough sand. That's why you want to wear clay clothes, because you have a lot of spatter. Okay. I'm going to bring this over because there's not enough water there. And catch up with me in a few minutes. I'm going to go all around the side, and we'll come back when all of the clay is on there, and we'll let you see how it works out. I'm going to throw just my last handful on here and smooth it out, and then I'm just going to go to the other side, and I'm just going to actually smooth it. The point of this is pushing the clay into what's been there, so you seal all the little air gaps that are sure to be there. So I'm pushing it in, and as I'm pushing it in, you can see that the clay is flattening out. And that's what you want. I'm going to push it all towards the bottom. And then just smooth it around the bottom.
So you're doing this with your hand
Just
right
my
now.
hand.
When we were building the house, we primarily did this with tools. What kind of tools would you use if you were doing this as a bigger job?
If you were doing a big job like on a wall, or if you were doing a floor, you would use what's called a float. And that is, there are two kinds of floats. One is, I would recommend stainless steel. That way it doesn't rust. And it has a handle on the top. It's a very flat piece of metal, and you can push it in. For this type of purpose, you could use a wooden float. You could make your own, or you could use a plastic trowel, some type of trowel. Just what you want is to push it against the surface, and so that when the rain and the wind come down, they have a sheer surface, a flat surface. See, you can see this here. We want to flatten that out, so that when the rain comes, it has a fast surface to come off of. And if you have to add a little bit of clay, go ahead. And as the clay dries, it gets harder to move around. So what you'd want to do is just take your spray bottle and spray that, or your tool. And when you're using a tool, spray the tool often. But for this, it's just nice to use your hand. And I'm going to just throw all the excess down at the bottom. you start to see this beautiful sheen that's coming up. And now is the time, like if you want to throw different colors of sand in here to make some beautiful design, you can do that. Shout out to all the people around the world who make these dwellings and live in these dwellings long before I heard of them. I have some mentors that taught me how to build with straw bale. I'd never heard of it. And Sarah Hyland and Aaron Dennis are straw bale builders and timber framers in Tompkins County, New York State. Our friends Brent and Diana Kotzman are designers and straw bale builders in the same place. Rob Roy wrote a book about the round cordwood house and does some straw bale work in there. I read that book before I decided to embrace straw bale construction and natural building. And as somebody who grew up in the construction industry, my family are builders, and so I'm the second generation, and they're all conventional builders, and so was I before I learned about natural building. And so there's a way that you can marry both of those things, which is what we did in our straw bale house. So I'm just going around this. I'm smoothing that out. You can put little pebbles in here if you want to create a design. Some people cut out glass bottles and use the ends, the bottoms, and make very, very beautiful pieces of art. Because that's what natural building is. It's taking the resources that we have from the earth and just reforming them into a structure that you can use. And we chose a round structure for our straw bale house because I not only had a family that were builders, but we were also farmers. So I looked at how we store our most important resources in the United States particularly, and on farms, and that's in the silo forms. Because the wind will break around and not force a flat surface. So it stays very true, and your doors and windows don't jam after a few years. And around the world, you'll see that for tens of thousands of years, wonderful people who are nomads had yurts for the very same reasons. It's the strongest dwelling that you can put your family in, especially when you're facing climate change winds and hurricane forces. Some of the only dwellings that survived the intense Category 5 hurricanes in Florida were round houses. Deltec is a company that makes patterned round houses, kits that you can buy, and I looked at a lot of their drawings before I came up with our floor plan for the roundhouse. As I mentioned, a builder before, Sarah Hyland, she was our primary lead builder on the straw bale house. Aaron Dennis was our timber framer. And Maria Klemperer Johnson, also straw bale and timber framing natural builder. So there's quite a few people doing this. And it's a wonderful experience, especially for children, because you can get really dirty and you can have a lot of fun and nobody yells at you. It's a great time. So we've completed this for now. I'm going to maybe add a few little stones to it to give it a little bit of character. And a wonderful nomad stopped by this morning. Lucy, thank you for the little stone for the chimney topper. That's going to go on there. It's beautiful. And that'll be for when we want to have a fire and then just use the coals for cooking and trap the heat. For the front here, we're going to just use, because we're running out of time, we actually have to leave here in 2 days. we're going to use just a wet shirt to go over the front, which will also create a very nice crust on the breads because you have that little bit of steam that's going to come off of that, but that'll trap the heat too. So that is what is known as the primitive cob-built oven with the soils, clays, sands, water, and straw from the prairies of the beautiful state of Arizona. And we're so fortunate to be here and to have this experience and to do this project. It was just a beautiful stay here, and we're grateful. So tune in when we fire it up.
So look at this. We got a fire started in our oven here, and it's coming along. I just started it up with using some magnesium and a fire starter and a little bit of yucca debris from a dying yucca plant, and we got that all started up, and we're going to make some coals in there. And then Joanne has been busily making homemade pizza dough, so we're going to throw a pizza in there and see how it works. All right.
So it's sundown and we're about to take out the first pizza. This is our Virgin Voyage here. So we put this t-shirt over it. We soaked it in water with the clay so it didn't catch on fire for any reason. There wasn't a live fire going. There's just coals in this oven. And I'm going to just take the top off first to see what we've got here. So I'm going to just dust that off. Oh, that's going good, but it's not done yet. We could show.
Okay, there's
That's
the pizza.
nice.
Still cooking though. It's been in for 10 minutes. We wanted to make sure it wasn't burning.
Right. So I'm going to just grab some coals here, put them on the top. That is plenty hot enough on the sides, I'll tell you. Okay. There. Okay. Okay, let's leave that for another few minutes.
Okay, so we're going to take a look and see
Big reveal. Let's check out
if the bottom's burned or if it crisps.
Oh my god, it's perfect!
Oh,
look at that!
that is amazing!
Awesome. This is parchment paper for anyone who does not know that will not burn. So,
I'm so happy about this pizza. So we just stuck another one in to cook because Joanne likes mozzarella on hers and my stomach does not like mozzarella. So we're going to give this one a try. So happy this succeeded. Thank you, Joanne, for all your efforts.
Look at that. That's lovely.
Isn't that gorgeous? Okay. That is a pizza.
So we're going to just not cut the rest of it. We'll wait till mine is done and then we'll eat together. So, people, Dutch oven works. Put some coals on the top so you melt everything nicely. It took 15 or 16 minutes for that to cook all the way through to that beautiful crust pizza. Okay, we've just taken the second pizza out and it looks delish. So the first pizza is absolutely wonderful. We just added a little olive oil to it. And let's see what this one's looking like. Oh, it's looking beautiful. Look at the crust. Isn't that fabulous? Oh my goodness. Ooh, that's hot. That's beautiful. We're going to eat now. So I hope you're having something delicious where you live. And I hope you're having a great day. And if you're not, then change it. Because the joy that you experience is all in your own power. So take good care. Pura vida. Ciao.